Hey, what's up guys, it's your boy KCM What Ifs. Today we are gonna be reading The Turn of a Hero, or What If Naruto Left Jiraiya and Betrayed Konoha. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Funny how one could never predict what was in store for his future. What you would do, or what you would choose to do, would be the better statement. But the thing was, that this wasn't the type of funny that one would laugh at. It was more ironic and funny in a way. But it would just simply take too much time to explain the complexity of that thought. Naruto didn't know why he was thinking of something like that now of all times, when there was only one true obstacle standing between him and his selfish goal. Perhaps even childish in some ways, depending on how an outsider would view the current situation. Not that the silver-haired Rinnegan wielder cared about what others would think of what he was doing. He was doing it. Point and simple. There was no need to dig further than that. Well, not in his mind at least. Others would probably think differently. Looking straight at his other self, Naruto once more reflected on what he had been thinking of just a few moments prior. When he had first met Dark Naruto, he would have never guessed that this was how things would end between them. Naruto knew that only one of them was going to walk away from this fight. It was only a matter of who it was going to be. But no matter who walked alive after this confrontation, one thing was clear in Naruto's mind: the shinobi world was finished. With everything that had taken place in a mere day, perhaps even less than that, every great nation had been devastated. The one with the highest blow was obviously Konoha, seeing as it would cease to exist after today. And as for the other villages, I couldn't think of a better setting to end this, would you? Naruto looked at Shin, who was looking at the destroyed village around them, his curse mark still glowing as it ran across his entire body. Shin spread his arms around him. The whole reason I even came to existence in the first place was because of this place. And now, it's being destroyed as a result. You're not the one destroying this place, Naruto said with a calm voice. I'm the one doing this. Shin shook his head slightly at that. Do you really think that you would be here today if it weren't for me? Well, I can't really take all of the credit either. Madara sure did a good job at turning you into his little weapon. Shin looked straight at Naruto, their Rinnegan eyes meeting once more. You've been simply led by the hand ever since Kyuubi told you about what happened to Yuzu all those years ago. If someone else had been there, if one of your so-called comrades had been there with you, I'm positively sure that none of this would have occurred. You would have simply found some idiotic excuse to forgive this village and moved on, not caring at all about what they did in the slightest. Am I right? Silence was all that Shin received. Not that it changed anything. Shin already knew that he was 100% correct. That's your biggest flaw, Naruto. You are simply too easy to deceive, ready to follow anyone else's lead. You've acted that way ever since you were a kid. And that hasn't changed in the slightest now. Pointing at Naruto's Rinnegan, Shin continued, the Rinnegan and the Sharingan. The only reason you even possess them is because of someone else. They were simply given to you, along with a lot of your power. Like I have said, you've been simply led by the hand all along. You are nothing more than the work that was planned and created by someone else. Nothing more. Naruto simply stared at Shin. Are you done yet? Shin grinned at hearing the response from Naruto. Just trying to play it off isn't going to make me any less right. And you know it. You know I'm right. Because I am you. And you are me. You are nothing more than a fake. Naruto calmly looked at Shin. If I'm just simply a fake, then what does that make you? Shin frowned but didn't respond. Seeing this, Naruto continued, I'm not going to try and deny anything that you have said. Because you are right. My denying it would simply be idiotic. Naruto sighed as he looked at the ground beneath his feet, carrying on with a soft tone, I have often wondered what would have become of me if I hadn't taken Kurama's offer 3 years ago. I'm sure that it would have been different than this. But better? That is something that I can't answer. I don't think anyone can really. The answer simply deals with perspective. There is no right or wrong answer. Naruto then shrugged. Like I've already said, I'm not going to try and deny anything of what you said. Because I think that you might be right. Just what would have happened if someone else had been there when I learned the truth? Jiraiya? Tsunade? Or maybe even Kakashi? Maybe I would have forgiven the village like you said. But things didn't turn out that way. The only ones there were you and Kurama, so it's not of any surprise that I am where I am here today. Well, to me at least, he said with a chuckle. I've already known that the whole reason I even have the Rinnegan in the first place is thanks to Madara, for the plans that he already had in place years ago. That's the truth. But the whole reason that this is even happening is because of me. I chose to do this in the end. I could have chosen something else, but this is the one choice that I made. I know that for a fact. The context doesn't matter. Madara's role and my role go together. This wouldn't have happened if one of them were to be missing from the equation. I also know that you had your own secret agenda from the beginning along with Kurama, although he changed his mind somewhere along the road. But you, well, we're here right now, aren't we? That should offer enough of an answer. But the simple truth of the matter is that we're all shaped by the people around us, affecting our choices as a whole as well as to the type of human being that we become because of our choices. Madara, you, and Kurama, you three had a major role in turning me into who I am today. But in the end it comes back down to the simple fact that I chose this. You and everyone else simply affected it. But I could have turned my back on this. And then none of us would be here today. Shin was silent for a few moments before he sighed. You can turn it around any way you want. It still won't change anything that dash. Like I've already said, interrupted Naruto, there is no right or wrong answer to this. This is just how things are. Someone else could think differently about it. But do you really think that that would matter to me at this point? When things are finally coming to their end? If my resolve was that weak, then it would have been a miracle that I had even gotten to this point in the first place. Shin humphed at that before he grinned. Well, there is some truth in your words. I'll admit to that much at least. Anyone can think about this situation in any way that he desires. But just like you, I don't really give a rat's ass as to what they would think. All that matters to me at this point is killing you. Just like I did so with that little Hyuga pal of yours. Shin brought the hand that he had used to rip out Niji's heart in front of his face, a crazed look appearing on his face as a result. I can't wait to feel that way again when I'm ripping out your heart from your body. The only downside will be that I won't be able to do it again with you being alive to feel the pain that it would bring. But I guess then that I should simply savor it the first time as much as possible. Naruto brought the Saikatsu Gakari in front of him as Shin rushed at him with a faster speed than before. The curse mark that was present all throughout his body was still glowing. That sword can't save you forever. Naruto felt himself be pushed back as Shin sent a powerful punch to the sword in front of him. It didn't break the Saikatsu Gakari in half like it had done with Madara's gunbai earlier, but the punch was powerful enough to push him back. It's that curse mark of his, realized Naruto as he pushed Chakra to his feet, making him and Shin come to a standstill. I take it that Kabuto must have given it to him at some point. It must be his way of countering the advantage that you possess over him because of my chakra. Naruto had to agree with the nine-tailed fox on that, not that it mattered anymore. Now Naruto possessed the Saikatsu Gakari, a weapon that still tipped the odds in his favor. Shin gritted his teeth in frustration at the standstill before he brought his fist back and ducked down, sending a low kick towards Naruto's feet. In response, Naruto jumped up into the air, bringing his other hand forward, which was mirrored by his counterpart. Shinra Tensei. Both remaining Rinnegan wielders were once more at a standstill, each of them trying to blow the other one away. Feeling Shin got an advantage because of the curse mark that he now had, The red markings as well as the eye that they formed from before began to appear on Naruto, giving him the edge that he needed in order to retaliate against Shin. Shin gritted his teeth in frustration a second time before he and Naruto were both blown back from the collision of their gravity attacks. Quickly getting right back up, both of them rushed at each other again. Even through his frustration, Shin knew that Naruto had an advantage because of the sword that he now had in his possession. Quickly ducking to the side at the last moment before they clashed, Shin extended his arm towards Madara's broken gunbai. Using the Bansho tenon, the pieces of the gunbai were quickly pulled towards his open palm. Seeing this, Naruto rushed to Shin's location with the intent of stopping him. Shin brought his other arm in front of him, using it to defend himself from the sword strike that was sent at him by Naruto. Naruto had expected for Shin's arm to have been cut off immediately. Instead, the arm held, succeeding in stopping him from cutting down the rest of its owner's body as well. So he's using the gravity manipulation as a temporary shield, is he? Clever. But even so, the Saikitsugakari's real power wasn't to cut. No, it was to consume. But even that proved to be useless as nothing happened to Shin, who had the gunbai in his hand and quickly put it back together in one by applying his chakra to it. Well, it wasn't really back in one piece. Anyone could see that it had been broken right in the middle. The only thing keeping it together was the black energy that the weapon was entirely surrounded in. Naruto jumped back as Shin swung his new weapon at him. Naruto could only frown as he landed. Just why isn't the Saikitsugakari working on him? Kurama was silent, even though he had a theory but wasn't entirely sure yet. Shin grinned as began to swing the gunbai at Naruto's location. This should even the odds. Naruto readied himself as waves of dark-colored winds were shot at him by Shin. Having already seen this attack done by Madara, Naruto was already prepared for it. Bringing his freed hand forward, Naruto immediately repelled the tornado-like winds, one after the other. Instead of becoming dithered by this, Shin instead grinned. It would have been disappointing if that had finished this fight. Well, not that the thought even crossed his mind in the first place. Shin already knew for a fact that he would have to go all out here right now. After all, he was fighting himself here. Here I come, Naruto. Naruto jumped off into the air without a response, an act that was mirrored by Shin. Bringing the Saikitsugakari forward, it clashed with the gunbai that was now in Shin's possession. The two wielders of the weapons tried to push the other back, pushing all of their raw strength into accomplishing this. Shin looked at Naruto with a crazed look as they both landed on the ground, both of their weapons still clashing with each other. You might have had an advantage over me with the Kyuubi's power, but not anymore. Now that I have the curse mark, things are back on an even field. Both Naruto and Kurama snorted at that, Kurama more so. Do you really think that a simple curse mark can match Kurama's power? This was a thought that was shared by the nine-tailed fox. What Shin was implying was a great insult to the Bijou. Not only that, but as of right now he couldn't do jack shit about it. Just like with Naruto in the past, Shin was turning out to be another pain in the ass that Kurama just couldn't have the pleasure of squashing with his paws. Shin for his part smirked as he jumped back, quickly sending another torrent of black wind in order to counter the wave of crimson energy that was sent towards him by Naruto swinging the Saikitsugakari forward. Landing, Shin chuckled. A regular curse mark? Of course not. Even I have to admit that Kyuubi possesses a formidable power. It's the whole reason I'm even here today, after all. You're welcome, muttered Kurama with no real meaning behind it. That had been one of his greatest mistakes that he had ever made in his long life. Shin then shrugged as the markings of the curse mark began to glow even more, quickly expanding even more to meet with each other, which effectively covered his entire body completely. His skin color turned from that of a tannish color to a dark brown color. Two fangs appeared on each side of his upper teeth as well as his hair growing even longer. It now reached almost to his lower back, resembling the length of that of Madara's hair that it had possessed. However, it still retained its jet black color. The most shocking change, though, was that of the appearance of two wings that erupted into life on Shin's back. The wings tore right through the fabric that made Shin's outfit and by default, Naruto's as well. Seeing this, Shin ripped out what remained of his top, leaving him now shirtless. This proved to be more comfortable for his newly formed wings. The wings also contained what appeared to be black feathers that ran on both sides of both wings. Kabuto made this curse mark especially for me. It enhances every single one of my techniques, as well as my natural speed and strength. Although, that isn't really much of a change as the other curse marks, but what makes this one so special is me. The more chakra that I feed into the curse mark, the stronger it becomes. Which by default, makes me stronger as well. More speed, more strength, and more powerful attacks. And thanks to our almost limitless stamina, I can give it as much chakra as possible. No, even more than that. Naruto could only lower his head when hearing this. What a pain in the ass. My own strength's being used against me. TCH, now I know how it feels to be played. Kurama sighed. What the idiot doesn't know is that that sword that you picked up does the exact same thing as his curse mark. As well as some other additional powers. Naruto quickly swung the Saikatsu Gakari forward once again, sending another wave of the sword's crimson energy towards the now cocky Shin. In retaliation, Shin swung the gunbai in his hands, sending the black wind to clash with the crimson energy again. Don't you get it yet? It's useless. Naruto didn't respond. Instead, he used the newly created cloud of smoke from the result of the impact of his and Shin's attacks to his advantage. Shin was taken back in surprise for a split second as Naruto appeared behind him, the Saikatsu Gakari's energy surrounding him completely. Shin disappeared in a dark flash as the blade of Naruto's sword ran right through where he had been. Looking up, Naruto wasn't surprised to see a flying Shin. The guy had wings for Kami's sake. What else was he supposed to do with them? Naruto teached in annoyance as he placed the Saikatsu Gakari on his shoulder at the moment. In terms of energy, Shin obviously had the advantage. Unlike the almost limitless supply of energy that the curse mark could receive from its wielder, the Saikatsu Gakari's own energy pool was limited. It increased in size with the more souls that it consumed. And while Naruto had made sure that it had consumed quite a number of souls, the energy that it gained from this wouldn't last forever. It would obviously run out a lot quicker than Shin's power, that was for sure. Off to the side and a safe distance away, Fu could only look up at the flying Shin. Taking a step forward, she was about to join the battle before she was stopped by none other than Chome. I know what you're thinking, but it would be in your best interest if you don't do it. Hearing this, Fu gritted her teeth in both frustration and anger. Frustration because Chome was stopping her from going through with what she was thinking of doing, and anger because she knew that her bijou was right. Then what am I supposed to dash? Patience. As well as to have faith in him. He will not lose here. That I am 100% sure of. Besides, if you die now, then our whole being here will have been for nothing. Now that just made the mint-haired girl even more confused than before. What are you talking about? Chome sighed silently. You don't have to worry about that for the moment, Fu. I know that you want to help Naruto no matter what. Even if it means that you have to give up your life as a result. Just know that the chance will come for you to do just that. That just gave the young girl even more questions than answers. But if there was one thing that Fu had learned ever since she had gotten to know Chome better, it was that the bijou was extremely wise. And often, that he was right. Not only that, but she had come to trust the bijou as well. And while not fully understanding what the bijou was telling her, Fu decided to put her faith in him one more time. And in Naruto as well. Up in the sky, Shin merely looked down at Naruto before he brought his freed hand up above him. Less than a second later, he brought it down in front of him. Kuchios. Naruto scowled as he immediately jumped out of the way of a giant hand appearing from the newly created cloud of dust due to the jutsu that had just been used. Landing, Naruto was immediately on the defensive again as another hand appeared above him, ready to squash him. Bringing his free hand above him, Naruto immediately counterattacked. Shinra Tensei. The decayed-looking hand was immediately stopped on its path to squash Naruto but wasn't pushed back. Falling to the ground on one knee, Naruto gritted his teeth as the hand tried to force its way through the attack in order to squash him like a bug. Naruto! Naruto! Fu was immediately on the run, heading towards Naruto who appeared to be losing the fight of pushing the giant hand away. Fu, don't! Hearing the stern tone on Komiai's voice, Fu hesitated for a moment before she continued to run towards Naruto. It wasn't long before the hand from before joined the first in trying to push through Naruto's attack. With just one of them in the fray it had been hard enough for Naruto. But both? No chance. Putting any rational thoughts aside, Fu was immediately less than 10 feet away from Naruto who saw her approaching despite the fact that two giant hands were trying to kill him. Having had enough, Naruto looked up at the two hands that were descending down towards him despite his gravity attack. Before they could completely reach him, red chakra began to surround Naruto. The said chakra quickly engulfed the approaching Fu as well, quickly shielding her as well as pushing both of the hands away. This was due to the fact that the red chakra manifested itself into Kurama's form with said bijou quickly repelling the hands away. The hands themselves belonged to none other than the Geto Mazo which had been summoned by Shin. It now had both of its hands free from their restraints that it had just tried to use to kill Naruto. A moment later, Shin landed on the demonic statue's head, looking straight at Naruto who was now standing on top of Kurama's head. A wide-eyed Fu was currently next to Naruto with the said mint-haired Jinchuriki now sitting on her ass on Kurama's head. I told you not to interfere. Fu flinched slightly at the angry voice of Chomei that ran throughout her head. But she wasn't sorry for what she had just done. She knew that it was stupid. Hell, beyond stupid. She also knew that this was a fight that she had no place in. She just simply wasn't strong enough for her to take part in it. But despite all that, the thought of seeing Naruto die was just too much for her. She didn't care if it wasn't the shinobi way of thinking in situations like this. All she cared about was Naruto. Is this how Sakura felt about Sasuke? At that thought, Fu could only sigh. It seemed that she wasn't that much better than the pink-haired medic after all. Naruto glanced at the sitting Fu for a moment to make sure that she was all right before turning his attention back to Shin and the Geto Mazo. Thanks, Kurama. Kurama Edition, don't thank me just yet, Naruto. Something about the way that the bijou said made Naruto feel uneasy for some reason. And that was something that Naruto had not felt in a long time. Well, not since Mikoto and Obito had been chasing after him when he was in the land of the lightning looking for the summoning contract of the dragons at least. Now that felt like it had taken place ages ago. But that was something that Naruto could not dwell on at the moment. No, he had a bigger problem at hand at the current time. Shin scowled as he looked at Kurama. Still getting in my way, are you, Kyubi? Just what exactly do you see in that fake? I'm the real Naruto. Not him. Kurama simply sighed. No, you're not. You're something else entirely. You're not Uzumaki Naruto. That distinction goes to the brat that's standing on top of my head. Not that it should be much of an honor anyway. If the situation wasn't so serious, Naruto was sure that he would have sweat-dropped at Kurama, defending him. Shin smirked. I guess you're right about that. I am something else. Something better. I'm not Uzumaki Naruto. I'm now Shin, the true heir of the Rikudo Sennin. Naruto couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. And what makes you think that? Shin shook his head. Isn't it obvious? Out of the two of us, I'm the better one. If the Sennin would have known about me, then he wouldn't have made you his heir. You're not good enough to fulfill that role. Naruto chuckled until he erupted in laughter. Ha 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 ha. And you think that you are? Look at yourself. I'll admit that I'm no better than you are, but I don't try to hide it. You yourself are trying to destroy the entire world. How is that exactly going to help fix this mess that we call the shinobi world? Not only that, but you're selling the Sennin short. He's pretty aware of your existence. Naruto smirked darkly. In fact, he's known about you since the beginning. Now Shin was starting to become confused, not that he showed it. What are you talking about? Naruto continued to smirk as he pointed at Shin and at himself. I'll let you in on a little secret since you obviously seem to be out of the loop. The Rikudo Sennin knew about it from the beginning because he is me. And I am him. We are the same. Shin gritted his teeth in anger. That's not Dash. It is, interrupted Naruto. He told me so himself, but I'm sure that you must have thought of yourself as the true reincarnation since you're a cocky bastard. Well, you weren't far off. Although I know for a fact as to who I am. You just based it on the fact that you think of yourself as a god. Well, you're not. You're nothing more than a shadow of who I really am. The fact that you took the name of Shin proves it. As well as the fact that you're trying to kill me. You're simply trying to prove to yourself that you're more than a simple copy despite the fact that you know deep in your non-existent heart that that is the simple truth. That's who you are, Shin. Nothing more, nothing less. That was the last straw. Whatever sanity that still existed in Shin was now utterly gone. Growling, Shin screamed in anger as well as the Geto Mazo before it charged straight at Kurama in order to get to Naruto. Seeing the approaching giant statue, Kurama held his ground as he shot his tails towards the statue in order to stall it. Fu shook her fists in frustration. She didn't want things to go this way. Naruto had been protecting her all this time, saving her from what would have become a gruesome fate if the elders had had their way, especially Danzo. Of course Obito had also been there to help her ever since she had met him that day in Taki. Even though he had stated otherwise, Fu knew that she had earned a small spot in Uchiha's heart. They had become good friends. Just like it had happened with Neji and Anko. But Naruto was different. Fu didn't really know what had drawn her to him, but before she knew it, she had fallen for her fellow Jinchuriki. And now, when she wanted to help him the most, she couldn't do a single thing. It was frustrating to say the least. The Geto Mazo roared in anger as it tried to maneuver around the incoming tails, but instead it found itself on the receiving end of a powerful push from the combined tails. Shin growled before he brought his next card forward. The Geto Mazo opened its mouth as it continued to wrestle with the tails. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw this. Is he going to bring out Shikaku? That would be stupid. No doubt the idiot is weakened from having had all of his chakra used in order to create all those white zetsus. That was the only possible way that both Naruto and Kurama could see that the clones had been made. Especially with the quantity and the short amount of time. No doubt that it had been done by Obito. He was the best logical choice. But it seemed that Shin didn't know that. It wasn't that surprising really since he had obviously arrived after the White Zetsu army had done its damage on the village and its shinobi. Well, this will work out to our advantage then. A moment later and a pissed-off looking Shikaku came out from the Geto Mazo which made Kurama jump back lest the one-tailed Bijou appear right on top of him. What the fuck is this? Naruto chuckled slightly. Well, he's not a happy Bijou. Oi, you now serve me, got that? Shikaku turned his head to look at whoever had said that and found the person to be some weird-looking human. Well, all humans were weird-looking in his opinion. But he was not in the mood to put up with this crap. He was tired. Almost all of his chakra was now gone since something had taken it away from him. He didn't know what. But now he was free again. And despite his weakened state, he planned to keep it that way. Looking down at his feet, Shin raised an eyebrow as sand began to wrap around his feet. Looking back at Shikaku, he saw a twisted grin on the biju's face. I take orders from no one, got that? Shin simply sighed before repelling the sand away from his feet before it could crush them. Why he had even thought that this was going to work was beyond him at this point. The Geto Mazo then sprung into action the next moment, quickly grabbing a hold of both of Shikaku's shoulders. Shikaku for his part screamed in anger as he tried to push the statue off of him but instead found himself starting to feel even weaker than before. On top of the Geto Mazo, Shin quickly ducked down as Naruto appeared behind him surrounded in Kurama's chakra cloak, swinging the Saikatsu Gakari at his torso. Fire style, Gokakyu. Naruto was immediately engulfed in the fire attack but wasn't harmed. Instead, he simply absorbed it using the Rinnegan, not to mention Kurama's chakra that was protecting him. Shikaku felt himself beginning to be absorbed back into the Geto Mazo until both Kurama and Chomei appeared on his side, quickly pushing the statue back and away from the weakened Biju. Kurama smirked at Chomei. Glad you decided to join the party. Chomei addition, it was Fu's idea, not mine. But Kurama continued to smirk. He knew that if Chomei didn't want to participate, he wouldn't have allowed Fu to transform into him. That was the key of the full transformation between a Jinchuriki and the Biju that he or she possessed, a bond between the host and the beast. Shikaku for his part could only look at both Biju in front of him in complete surprise. Why were they helping him? Biju never helped each other. Especially the two in front of him. They had always been the more loners of the group. So why? But Kurama had already sensed this. Without turning around, he said, "You can thank us later, Shikaku. As of right now, we have a battle to win." Shin glanced behind him for a moment to see what was happening. What he saw caused him to become even more enraged than ever. He then felt his senses telling him to dodge but wasn't able to respond in time. He grunted in pain as he felt something pierce him right through his left shoulder. You don't have time to look away, you know. Turning around to come face to face with Naruto who had stabbed him with the Saikatsu Gakari, Shin scowled. Do you really think that this will stop me? No, nothing can stop me. You should know that, Naruto. Naruto simply smirked in return. You know something. I was wondering as to why my sword wouldn't work on you. And I've finally figured it out. Shin frowned, not understanding in the slightest before he felt his power being drained by him once Naruto had placed his other hand on his other shoulder. It's because you don't have a soul. You're simply a chakra entity like the Biju that has also gained a body. But because you're my chakra, I can absorb you. Shin gritted his teeth in anger before bringing the gunbai that he still had in his possession and tried to cut down Naruto's hand that was still in his shoulder. But Naruto brought his hand back before that could happen. Using the Saikatsu Gakari as a footing, Naruto jumped on it before jumping up to the air and bringing the Saikatsu Gakari with him as well as sending a final kick at Shin's chest which sent him tumbling back. Holding his wounded shoulder in pain, Shin looked up at Naruto in anger. You will not stop me. Keep telling yourself that. Gripping the gunbai in his hands even more tightly, Shin flew up towards Naruto who was still in mid-air. As for the Geto Mazo, it soon found itself on the receiving end of a beating by three Biju that just didn't seem to get enough of beating the crap out of it. With Naruto no longer being on it, the three Biju finally went all out on the statue that had once been the Jubi's body. The Geto Mazo fell to the ground before it used its hands as a support in order to stop itself from completely falling to the ground. Most of its body was now in bad shape thanks to the Biju currently present. Kurama, Chomei, and Shikaku all stood side by side as they prepared to use the strongest technique in their arsenal that was known only to the Biju. Bringing all of their chakra together as well as what little the Shikaku possessed, a gigantic tail beast ball appeared. By Jadama. The Geto Mazo raised its head only for it to see the incoming attack, ready to blow him up into tiny pieces. Which it did. Not being able to dodge, the Geto Mazo was soon engulfed in the attack. Up in the air, both Naruto and Shin were in the middle of executing a series of combos of strikes from both the Saikatsu Gakari and the Gunbai respectively. But due to the magnitude of the last attack, they found themselves being flown back as a result of the shockwave after the attack had exploded. Shin tried to use his wings as a countermeasure against the powerful shockwave so that he wouldn't be thrown around like a rag doll. Naruto for his part used one of his chakra hands from Kurama's chakra cloak in order to grab a hold of the ground beneath him. A few moments later, the aftershock of the attack died off, leaving a sizable crater now in its impact with the remains of the Geto Mazo being in the middle. Quickly seeing this, Shin looked at the three bijou responsible in barely restrained anger. The whole reason that he had summoned the Geto Mazo in the first place besides bringing out Shikaku in order to use him against Naruto was so that he could seal the other bijou within it. Then, he would possess the Jubi and become its Jinchuriki. But now that the Geto Mazo had been destroyed, that plan was shot to hell. Quite literally as well. Taking all of this in, Shin pushed more chakra into his curse mark. At first, he had hoped to just play around before he finally killed Naruto and took all of the bijou. After all, he wanted to enjoy this as much as possible, but now he just threw that plan out of the window. Now, he was just simply going to end it. Gathering as much chakra as possible, Shin appeared right in front of the three bijou in an instant. They were his first target. So caught up in his dark thoughts, Shin didn't notice the appearance of Naruto on top of Kurama's head at the last moment. Shinra Tensei. All around them, everything was blown to oblivion. That included buildings such as the Hokage building and every other structure around it as well as trees and anything else in the blast radius. This part of the village was just one big crater now. A panting Shin looked at his handiwork. That had taken quite a bit of chakra, but he still had more than enough to finish things with Naruto if he had survived this anyway. Looking in front of him, the first thing that Shin saw after the cloud of dust began to clear up was the downed form of Shikaku. The bijou was still conscious, however. But that was barely. Shikaku looked at Shin with frustration present in his yellow eyes at the fact that he couldn't kill him because of his weakened state. Shin smirked. "You'll soon be of use to me. But for now, stay there like a good beast, would you?" Shikaku snarled but knew that there was nothing he could do right now. Shin tore his eyes away from Shikaku in order to look for the other two bijou. The one that he wanted to see beaten down the most was Kurama for obvious reasons. As the cloud of dust dissipated more, Shin saw one of the most surprising things that he had ever seen. And that was an unharmed Kurama that was currently wearing Naruto's Susanoo-like armor with said Rinnegan wielder standing on top of Kurama's head, arms crossed and with the Saikatsu Gakari on his back. An injured Fu was kneeling next to him. The attack had managed to damage her some before Naruto got to her. Shin scowled as he saw this. "How did you dash?" "Believe me," interrupted Naruto, "I'm as surprised as you are. But this is simply an idea that Kurama gave to me." Glancing at Shikaku, Naruto bowed his head slightly. "It seems that I wasn't able to protect you though since you don't have a Jinchuriki anymore. I apologize for that." Shikaku snorted before looking the other way even though he did appreciate Naruto's sentiment. But that didn't mean that he was going to show it though. Shin snorted as well. "What's this? Do you actually care for the bijou? That's the dumbest thing that I have ever seen. And that is why Naruto is standing on my head, not you," retorted Kurama. "You know nothing. That is why the old man chose Naruto and not you." Shin shrugged. "Then I'll just show my past self that I'm the right one, not the fake before me." Naruto shook his head. "Still going on about that, are you?" He then smirked. "That being said, I'm going to enjoy this." Shin's smirk matched Naruto's. "I could say the same thing." No more words were said as Kurama rushed at the still Shin before said individual brought his hand down on the ground that he had used to summon the Geto Mazo again. Kuchios. Kurama clashed with a newly summoned creature. Said creature happened to be none other than a dragon, except that this one was different from the rest. For starters, the dragon was bigger than the others that Naruto had summoned so far. Not only that, but his whole body was of pure black color except for his eyes, which were a dark purple color. Both the dragon and Kurama hit the other with their heads. Naruto frowned as he looked at the dragon. Is this? That's right. I introduce you to the leader of the dragon summons, Kurai, the dragon of the darkness. Naruto sighed. This guy is out of his mind. But, this gives the opportunity that I've been waiting for. Now then, Kurai, it's time to kick you out of your throne that you seem to be so proud of. Two swords manifested themselves next to Kurama, who grabbed a hold of them and quickly used them to try to stab Kurai. The dragon leader for his part brought both of his wings in front of him as a protective shield of sorts. Naruto frowned as he noticed that the swords from his Susanoo didn't pierce the wings. So, it seems that they're your defense, eh? But still, for them to be able to be resilient enough to completely block against my swords, not bad, Kurai. But still. Kurai quickly found himself surrounded by multiple wooden stakes that erupted to life all around him. The wooden stakes quickly wrapped themselves all around his body, including his wings. Shin frowned. So he managed to grab a hold of Hashirama's wood style, did he? Unfortunately, you're nowhere near his level of mastery of the Mokuton. This was proven to be true as Kurai quickly and effortlessly broke from his wooden prison. But Naruto already knew this from the beginning. All that he had managed to gain from seeing Hashirama was to get an understanding of how to even perform the Mokuton, but not anything else. He didn't have the control or knowledge to perform it flawlessly like Hashirama could, or perform any of the other advanced techniques. But this had been enough. Due to the opening that the distraction had provided him with, Kurama quickly brought one of the swords upward, cutting a straight line the more he advanced upwards towards Kurai's head. The said dragon howled a piercing scream in extreme pain. He quickly flapped his wings in order to fly away from Kurama. You're not getting away, screamed Naruto as Kurama readied another tail beat ball. Kurai quickly opened his mouth as a black energy ball appeared, which had the same appearance to that of the Biju's strongest attack. Both Kurama and Kurai shot their attacks at the same time. The end result was them impacting each other, which caused another major explosion to occur. The still down Shikaku growled in frustration as he felt some of the shockwave hit him. Fu could only shield her eyes from the brightness that the impact had caused. She had been right after all. This wasn't a fight that she had a part in. Shin looked down in anger as he saw an injured Kurai hit the ground. Get up, will you? You're supposed to be invincible. Kurai gritted his teeth in frustration at his summoner that was standing on top of his head. Why you? No one is invincible, Shin. Looking in front of him, Shin quickly found himself coming face to face with one of the swords from Naruto's Susanoo. Bringing his gun by in front of him, Shin tried to use it in order to block against the sword, but found that to be useless as the gigantic sword tore right through the weapon like it was nothing. At the last second, Shin disappeared in a dark flash in order to not get stabbed by the sword, as well as abandoned both the gunbai and Kurai. On top of Kurama's head, Naruto looked down at Kurai. It seems that you've been defeated, Kurai. Kurai simply huffed. Whatever you say, Uzumaki. I was simply waiting for you to try to summon me so that I could see if you were truly worth retaining our summoning contract. But you never did. That's why I went along with that idiot's instructions. But it seems that you are worth being our summoner, after all. If you don't die here today, that is. With that, Kurai disappears in a puff of smoke, returning back to the land of the dragons in order to rest and recover from his injuries. Naruto simply looked at the spot where the dark dragon had been before looking up to the sky to see a flying and infuriated Shin. Naruto smirked. Shall we continue? Mei could not believe what she was hearing as she ran behind Yagura, Utakata, and Rashi. The battle at the forest had been finished. With the arrival of Yagura and the units in his command, It had given them the final push that they needed in order to drive out the IWA shinobi as well as the samurai. After that had happened, the remainder of the AIM shinobi quickly took off towards Konoha in search of their leader, Mito. A few minutes later, all three Jinchuriki in front of her had held their heads as if they had a headache. But that was highly unlikely as they took off running towards Konoha the next moment. Ordering her shinobi to recover and regroup for the moment, Mei had seen no other choice but to follow behind them where she had demanded them to tell her what was going on, which they did. And their explanation was what had surprised her. Not, surprised was an understatement. Just how dash. We don't know, Mei, interrupted Yagura without turning to look at her. All we know is that we have to get to Naruto's location as soon as possible. Mei frowned. And what will you do once you get there? Yagura also frowned, not that Mei could see it. Like I said, I don't know. But what I do know is that it must be for something important. Isabu remained quiet, already knowing what was going to happen along with both Saiken and Son Goku. Mei's frown still held in her beautiful face before she sighed. Once again, she had no choice but to see what was going to happen. Reikage-sama, what are you dash? Don't give me that, Darui. Now where is that Uchiha? Darui took a step back from the enraged-looking A. Currently they along with the surviving Kumo shinobi were still in the forest surrounding Konoha, but they were not with the Kiri shinobi. And that was due to the order that their enraged Reikage had given them. Boss, I think you need to dash. A grabbed hold of Darui's neck. I don't have time for this, Darui. I'll explain things to you later, but as of right now, I have someone that I need to teach a lesson to. Darui frowned at hearing this. Now this seemed more like the Reikage that he knew, which confirmed his fears that something had indeed happened with him. But what? One thing was clear, however, and that was that Uchiha Mikoto had something to do with it. Sighing, Darui responded, I don't know where she is. The last time that I saw her, she was heading towards Konoha on top of the Gobi's head. Looking towards the direction of Konoha, he retracted his hand away from Darui's neck. Then that's where we need to go then. Give the order, Darui. We're going to Konoha. Darui merely nodded as he walked away, intent on carrying out his orders. One thought did invade his mind, however. This situation is so dull. Shin could only look on in complete anger as he was forced to go on the defensive. Things were not going the way that he had planned for them to go. Instead of the victory that he was sure that he was going to achieve here today, he was instead losing. Talk about getting your hopes destroyed. Jumping back a good distance in order to dodge the swipe from one of the swords from Naruto's Susanoo, Shin shot a barrage of small fireballs straight towards the top of Kurama's head where Naruto stood. Seeing this, Kurama quickly brought both of the swords that he now possessed in front of him, effectively blocking them. Less than a second later, he swung both swords forward, sending two large waves of dark energy from the swords. Shin quickly brought both of his hands in front of him as he landed in a crouching position, repelling the attack with his Rinnegan. Standing up to his full height, Shin scowled. He had one more trick up his sleeve that he had yet to reveal. Of course, he hadn't expected to actually use it. By this time, he had thought that he would have killed Naruto, and that he would be in the process of sealing the bijou into the Geto Mazo. His hands turned into fists. It was infuriating for him that he was losing right now. To Naruto of all people. Someone who he had always thought to be worthless and just simply a fake as to who Uzumaki Naruto truly was. And that was him. He was Uzumaki Naruto. He was the rightful heir of the Rikudo Sennin. And he was the rightful Jinchuriki for the Jubi. Not the person in front of him. Shin soon readied and summoned every amount of chakra that he could muster. This would probably be his last attack. But if he managed to kill Naruto with it, then it didn't matter. He would simply go after the bijou at a later date and then the world. But killing Naruto was his top priority right now. As far as he was concerned, nothing else mattered. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he felt something about Shin beginning to change. Not only that, but he could tell that Shin was gathering the remainder of his chakra. It was still a huge amount when compared to the average shinobi. Suddenly, without warning, gold glowing chains erupted into life from the ground all around him. The chains quickly wrapped themselves around Shin's body as well as his wings before the ends of the chains stuck back into the ground again, keeping Shin completely rooted to his spot. Struggling to get free, Shin turned to the side to see none the less than a kneeling Kushina who was responsible for the chains. Shin narrowed his eyes. You. From his spot, Naruto also saw Kushina's kneeling form. Surprise would be the first word that came to Naruto's mind before a small grin appeared on his lips before it vanished the next moment. A certain conversation replayed itself in his mind which caused him to not say a word for the moment. Turning his head to the other side, Shin then saw the approaching figures of B, Yujito, and Han running towards their location in the middle of the crater. More frustration, stronger than before, began to flood all throughout Shin's being. He was in no mood to deal with any more annoyances at the moment. Well, besides Kushina, that was. He had other plans for the redhead Kunoichi. Kurama smirked as he glanced at Kushina. About time you showed up, Kushina. If she was surprised at Kurama's current appearance, Kushina hid it well as she glanced at the Susanoo wearing bijou for a moment before focusing fully on Shin, who she held captive for the moment. There were some things that needed to be taken care of before I could get here. Kurama simply turned to look at Shin as well. Better late than never, I suppose. Naruto for his part still didn't say a single word to Kushina, who found this to be odd but decided to not comment on it at the moment. There was something else that needed to be taken care of first. And he was standing right in front of them. Shin sighed as he calmed himself before looking at Kushina straight in the eyes. I'm only going to give you one warning, Kushina, don't interfere. Out of everyone here, you're the one that I don't want to kill. In fact, a smirk appeared on his face, ditch these idiots and join me. You'll gain a lot more being with me rather than being with that fake up there. Kushina raised an eyebrow. And what would I gain exactly? Because last time I heard that you wanted to completely destroy this world. I don't see what I could possibly be gaining from that other than a certain death. And since I have a second chance to live my life, I would rather do something more productive with it rather than simply work to destroy it myself again. Shin frowned at the response. You don't want to do this. Kushina shook her head. You're talking to a woman that is as stubborn as they come. My mind has already been made up ever since I first woke up in Naruto's seal. I'm sticking with him. And you're mistaken on something else as well, he's not the fake. You are. And no matter what you do, that will never change. Shin simply lowered his head, gritting his teeth together in anger. What Kushina had just told him hit him straight home. He didn't know why, but he had come to take a liking to the woman in front of him. In the past, if he had met her, he would have killed her in an instant along with Minato. But that had changed. Shin didn't know how. Perhaps it had something to do with his bonding with Naruto, who cared deeply for her. But now, even that had been denied to him and by Naruto himself as well. Really, Shin was almost certain that some supreme being hated his guts. His poor existence was proof of that. B, Yujito, and Han came to a halt a good distance away from Shin's position, knowing full well what was currently taking place. It was the moment of truth for them. They didn't know why exactly they were here at the moment, but all three of them knew that they would know that soon enough. Very well then. The golden chains that were still wrapped around Shin were repelled in an instant, sending Kushina back to the ground on her back with a loud thud. Shin looked at her with anger. If that's the case, then I will kill you first. You're forgetting something. Shin brought both of his hands forward as Kurama brought the Susanoo swords down upon him. Using his Rinnegan, Shin tried to repel them but found the task to be difficult. Kurama possessed massive strength. Naruto quickly used this opening to his advantage as he jumped down from Kurama's head and down towards Shin's location. Both sensing and seeing this, Shin began to gather his chakra once more as he prepared to do his final technique. In the current situation that he was in, it was almost certain that he would die as well since the jutsu required intense concentration. But if it meant killing Naruto, then he would do it gladly. Naruto brought the Saikatsu Gakari in front of him as he sensed the concentration of Shin's chakra once more. Shin had a twisted grin as a bright light engulfed his form completely. Both Naruto and Kurama knew what Shin was trying to do at the moment. And they both knew that it would not end well for those in the area. Yujito and Han covered their eyes with their hands in order to shield them from the bright light. So caught up in this that they did not notice their respective Biju's chakra surrounding their forms. Yagura, Utakata, and Rashi, who were running towards where the fighting was taking place, also shielded their eyes from the light, with only Yagura noticing that he was surrounded in Isabu's chakra as well as Mei, who was running behind them. Isabu, what's going on? It's time. Bringing every available energy that the Saikatsu Gakari still held within itself as well as even adding energy from his own soul, Naruto took the attack head-on. The energy from the Saikatsu Gakari clashed with the incoming explosion that resulted from Shin releasing the remainder of his chakra out of his body in a violent manner. The energy that was created from this chaotic release was what just caused the massive explosion. Shin's chakra was that toxic and unstable once it was freed from his body. Naruto gritted his teeth as he fought to push the explosion back. This was the last thing that he remembered before everything went black. No explosion. No crater. No Konoha. Nothing. Opening his eyes, the only thing that Naruto saw was, well, nothing really. He was just standing in an empty and black room. Or well, what he thought was a room anyways. There were no windows present nor were there any doors. Peculiar place, isn't it? Recognizing the voice immediately, Naruto turned around in an instant, coming face to face with the last person that he would have imagined. Okay, maybe not the last, but it was still surprising. Mikoto? One Uchiha Mikoto smirked as she looked at Naruto with the same twinkle of playfulness present in her black eyes like when she had been looking at the burning village of Konoha. The one and only. Naruto shook his head as if he was trying to get rid of something. And that something was Mikoto's form. Seeing this, Mikoto pouted. What? Aren't you happy to see me? Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. It's not that. It's just that I didn't expect to see you here. Well, wherever here is. Mikoto chuckled. So you don't know yet, eh? Naruto raised another eyebrow. Know what? Mikoto sighed as she closed her eyes for a couple of seconds before she opened them, looking straight at Naruto. I'm dead, Naruto. Naruto simply looked right back at her. What kind of game are you playing? She's not playing a game, Naruto. She's dead, and so are we. All around him, familiar faces appeared around both Naruto and Mikoto. Mito, who was the one that had responded to Naruto's question, Obito, Sasuke, Neji, and Itachi. You guys. Neji chuckled at Naruto's shocked look. I didn't think that I would see that look on your face. Sasuke for his part smirked. I agree with you on that, Neji. What's the matter, Adobe? After everything you've learned and seen so far, do you really think that this is the most shocking out of all of them? Itachi nodded. My foolish little brother is right. Obito brought both of his hands behind his head with a small grin on his face. Like Itachi said, Sasuke is right. We're here, talking to you even though we're already dead. Just deal with it and move on, will you? Naruto came out of his shock and teached. What? Everyone is shocked at some point, you know. Mito chuckled. Yes, you're right about that. But that's not why we're here. Naruto sighed as he looked at every single one of their faces. Since Neji, Obito, and Itachi are here, I guess it must be true. Looking at the other three, Naruto sighed again. So you three died too, eh? Sasuke smirked again. What? Are you actually sad about that? It was then that Mikoto elbowed her youngest son in the stomach, which knocked the wind out of him. Looking at Naruto with a small smile, Mikoto said, I think what Sasuke-chan is trying to say but lacks the capacity in doing so is that you don't need to blame yourself, Naruto. I'm pretty sure that we're all here in this position because we want it that way. Hearing this coming out from Mikoto's lips, Obito looked at the only female Uchiha present indigently. What was that? Then why did you try to strangle me to death again when you first saw me? Mikoto whistled innocently while looking away. I don't know what you're talking about. Obito narrowed his eyes. Why you? Clearing her throat, Mito continued where Mikoto had left off, like Mikoto was saying, we're all here by choice. We had already fulfilled what we were trying to accomplish. Naruto frowned as he looked at Neji. Seeing this, Neji nodded. Yeah, even me. Reaching towards his Konoha headband, Neji took it off as well as the bandages underneath, revealing his forehead with no seal present. Thanks to you, I'm now free. I no longer feel as if I were trapped inside of a cage. The choices that I made may not have been the best, but in the end, I don't care. Right or wrong, I chose to follow you through my own free will. That's what I truly wanted. To know that I was the one in control of my life, well, now I have it. Even if I'm now dead. Naruto closed his eyes upon hearing that. I see. Mikoto then took hold of Naruto's hands with her, bringing them in between them. Sasuke simply sighed slightly at the sight, recognizing the look that his mother currently wore. So, there really was something going on between them. Itachi had no reaction. The Uchiha will no longer be needed in the new world, stated Mikoto softly. I've already seen the state that the village is in. Even though it wouldn't have been bad to be standing at your side in the end, I'm content with this. She's right, Obito said as he pointed at Mikoto. Even though I'm not a fan of the shinobi world that we were born in, it was all that I knew of. I don't think that I would have been able to adapt to the new world that will come about as a result of this. The new world, repeated Naruto in a soft tone. Surely you must know as to what the end result will be of all of this, said Mito as she rejoined the conversation. The shinobi world is finished. And perhaps a better one will take its place, continued Itachi. Sasuke shrugged. I highly doubt that, but who knows? Maybe it will happen that way. Naruto simply chuckled. He didn't really know what to say at the moment. But what could he say? Because he couldn't really find anything. Mikoto retracted her hands as she took several steps back, looking at Naruto with a smile before she brought both of her sons and Obito together within her arms. You don't have to worry about us now. We're together now. And in the end, that's all that we really care about. Neji simply sent Naruto a small wave. Good luck. Mito nodded her head at her fellow Uzumaki. I wish you good luck as well. And don't forget to thank the Shinigami when you get the chance. It was thanks to him that we were able to talk to you one final time. Naruto simply nodded at them in return before they all disappeared in a bright flash which blinded him for the moment. Brat. Oi, stupid silver-haired brat. Wake the hell up, said Brat, opened his eyes after having had closed them due to the bright flash in which the others had disappeared in. Opening his eyes, Naruto found himself in another different place which was clearly not the real world. For one, Naruto had already been here before when he had talked to all of the Bijou in AIM. It was the only place accessible to the Bijou and their respective Jinchuriki. Unlike last time, though, the Jinchuriki themselves were present save for Gaara. Fu looked around in surprise. What is this? The last thing that she remembered had been the explosion that had been generated from Shin releasing his chakra in an explosive manner. This is the sanctum for us Bijou, answered Chomei who stood behind her. Although we ourselves haven't used it for many years. Gyuki humphed at this. That would be yours and Kyubi's fault. You two have always been the loners out of all of us. Seeing a fight beginning to occur, Son Goku decided to intervene. None of us can point fingers at anyone else. Truth of the matter is that we all lost ourselves. After the Rikudo Sennin died, we all left towards different paths and decided to abandon each other instead of remaining together like the Sennin had hoped. Isabu hummed in agreement to that. So there was also bad blood between the Bijou as well, is that it? Thought Naruto as he observed this before glancing at Kurama who stood behind him. Said Bijou was simply watching this silently as well. There certainly is more to the Bijou than we humans thought. Of course, that was something that Naruto had learned ever since he ditched Jiraiya all those 3 years ago. Bijou weren't simple mindless beasts. Well, Shikaku came close but still. They actually possessed a rational mind like humans did as well as individual names. Naruto smirked slightly at that. No doubt it was the Sennin's way of trying to make them realize that they simply weren't just parts of the Bijou but individual beings. Not that I disagree with him either. But then again, he is me, so I guess that I'm sort of responsible for that as well. Fuck it, I shouldn't dwell on that. I can't let the other's death be for nothing. So is this what we were supposed to do, thought Yagura. Or is it something else? Time in this world is different from that of the real world, stated Isabu. Not to mention the explosion that dark chakra entity created that will surely buy us some time. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't wrap things up here as quickly as possible. The other Bijou nodded in agreement save for Shikaku. Oi, what exactly are you talking about? Kurama sighed. So you've forgotten, have you? Yujito stepped up. Hold on. Just what exactly is going on here? And why are we here? Of course, she was referring to the Jinchuriki themselves. It will all become clear soon enough, kitten, answered Matatabi behind her. There was a tint of sadness in the Bijou when those words were uttered which made Yujito look behind her to gaze at her Bijou. Han for his part merely brought one of his hands to the red straw hat that he wore, lowering it slightly in order to shadow his eyes. Kokuo saw this but didn't comment. He could already tell what his host was thinking. B hummed a tune to himself as he looked around. The bond between the Jinchuriki and the Bijou is a wonderful thing, yo. Chomei sighed. I believe he said something like that before. Gyuki and Matatabi simply chuckled. Utakata looked at Naruto. So? You're the apparent boss here. Why are we here? Naruto shrugged. I'm in the same boat as you. But I think I know someone who will tell us what this is all about. He turned around in order to face Kurama, indicating that he was talking about him. Kurama was silent for a few moments before he answered, I'll get straight to it then. This deals with a certain friend of ours that needs to be dealt with now. Naruto faced the other Jinchuriki, already knowing as to whom Kurama was referring to. But it did raise the question as to just how exactly they were going to accomplish that. Don't beat around the bush, Kyubi, stated Saiken. There's still that dark entity outside that needs to be killed as well. Kurama glanced at him in slight annoyance. I'm trying to butter this up. What is required from them isn't exactly easy. Naruto smiled. Funny. I never would have thought that you would ever say something like that out loud, Kurama. Kurama opened his mouth to retort but closed it a moment after, finding nothing to say. Rashi raised an eyebrow. What do you mean by, what is required? Behind him, Son Goku sighed. It's simple, Rashi. We're going to have to become one in order to defeat the Jubi once and for all. The Jubi, repeated Yujito in shock. What are you dash? He's right, kitten, interrupted Matatabi. Without all of us, Naruto wouldn't stand a chance. Even with the Rinnegan. But how did the Rikudo Sennin defeat it in the past then, asked Yagura. He sealed it, Isabu responded. That's not what we're trying to accomplish here right now. We're trying to eradicate it once and for all so that it will have no hope of ever returning again. Fu looked at Naruto. And for that, he's going to need our help? Chomei nodded. Yes. And with that sword on his back as well. Naruto brought the Saikatsu Gakari in front of him, looking at the sword in surprise. How exactly is this going to dash? I asked you before if you wanted to use my real power. Well, this is the other half of it. Glad to hear from you again, responded Naruto. I'm just simply shy. But I already know what your bijou buddy is planning. And he's right in doing so. This is the only way in which the Jubies would be completely eradicated, leaving behind only its power. And what way is that exactly? Like I've said, this is the other part of my power that the Sennin designed, except that it's never been used before, since I have a feeling that the Sennin created it only for this purpose. Just get on with it. My power is that of soul absorption. The more souls I consume, the stronger I become and the more power that you receive. After I have consumed enough souls, my wielder receives the third eye. With this, any genjutsu and the sword are ineffective. But you've already done that. That was true. When Naruto had fought Ibiki, he had broken through the interrogator's illusion like it was nothing. And without Kurama's help either. That is one part. The other, however, deals with chakra. But only one specific type of chakra. Realization began to sink in. The chakra of a bijou. Exactly. The Jubi no longer possesses a real body. Only if you let it free can it once again materialize a body for itself. But as of right now, all it has is its chakra and its will. But with me, you can destroy its will, leaving behind only its chakra for yourself. If there was one thing that Naruto had learned all these years, it was that when things sounded too good to be true, that was due to the fact that it was. There was always a catch inserted in there somewhere. If this truly is possible, then why didn't the Rikudo Sennin use this method instead of sealing the Jubi? I've already given you the answer to that. My other power can only be activated once I absorb the chakra of a bijou. The more that I have, the stronger that I become. But the Sennin didn't have this available to him in his time. If he were to have used this method, he would have had to collect the chakra that the Jubi left behind after it went on its rampages. But it would have taken years for him to collect the necessary amount of chakra that is required in order to destroy the Jubi's will. I see, and how much chakra is required exactly? There was no response for a few moments. Finally, the sentient sword answered. In the case of the Jubi, a huge amount would be needed. Its will is bonded that strong to its power. Much more than that of the Kyubi's will with his chakra. Don't beat around the bush, just answer the question. The necessary amount required is equal to that of all of the chakra of the bijou combined. And what exactly will happen to them in return? That's a stupid question, and you know it. The bijou are simply chakra with a conscious. Once all of it is taken from them, they will disappear since they don't possess a body either, since they're sealed. Well, except the Ichibi, that is. But with how weakened he is, he will no doubt disappear as well. And the other Jinchuriki? Another stupid question. Really, asking me is not going to change what will happen to them. They're going to die. Exactly. It would be the same as if their bijou were extracted. The end result is death. That applies to you as well. Your only salvation will be the chakra that will be left behind by the Jubi. It will no doubt replace that of the Kyubis. And there it was. The catch. The Jubi would be finally gone, but at the cost of the lives of the others. And don't think that you can escape this either. With how things are, the Jubi could one day become free. In your past life, it took every single ounce of your willpower to keep the Jubi at bay. The only reason that you haven't had any difficulty is that you have sealed it in the deepest corner of your subconscious. That, and that it is also not at full strength just yet. But once it is, it will start to fight back, since you have no doubt annoyed it. Well, as far as I've gathered so far, that is. This is the best choice. Naruto knew that. It wouldn't take a genius to realize that either. The Jubi was simply too much of a threat to leave it alone like that. The destruction of Konoha had taken Naruto's mind off that problem, but then what? That was now done with. Like the Saikitsugakari said, there was a possibility of it escaping one day. And that would bring too many consequences that Naruto would rather not deal with. Focusing back in the current space that he and the rest of the Jinchuriki occupied, Naruto came face to face with many worried looks. "Are you all right?" asked Fu as she took a step forward towards him. "You suddenly spaced out on us." "He was simply learning what needed to be done," stated Kurama from behind him. Yagura looked at Naruto with a curious look. "Is that so? I would ask how, but there is no time for that." "So? What do we need to do?" Naruto sighed silently before his face became devoid of emotions. "I'm simply going to take back what I gave you." Utakata teached. "Stop talking in riddles. Just come out with it." But Yagura understood immediately along with all of the bijou. Fu looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "Just what do you mean?" "I guess I should clarify myself," he began. "In order to deal with the Jubi, I'm going to require the chakra of all of the bijou combined." Yujito crossed her arms in front of her chest. "And? That doesn't sound too hard." Rashi glanced at her before turning his eyes towards Naruto. "How much chakra from each bijou do you need anyways?" "All of it." So that's what he meant, thought Yagura as he closed his eyes. Not that it mattered to him. He had never wanted to live again. Not after what he had done when he had first been alive, but taking the opportunity that this chance had presented him with, he had tried to amend some of the mistakes that he had made. Of course, he knew that he couldn't fix every single one of them. There were just simply too many of them. Not to mention all of the misery that his actions had caused. Of course, one could argue that he had simply been manipulated into causing all of that misery, but Yagura still felt responsible. If only he had been stronger, he could have fought back and prevented all of that pain from occurring, but that was just simply a wish that would never be granted. Utakata's eyes were wide in shock. Oi, if you take all of their chakra, then we will die." Naruto didn't even flinch. "I know." Yujito for her part frowned. "And just why do you expect us to do that? I know that you resurrected some of us here, but I'm not one of them. The only reason I'm here is that Reikage-sama ordered me to be. There's nothing more than that." B was merely silent. "I'll do it." All heads turned toward Han's direction, who had been the one that had said that. Those words had also been the first ones that he had said so far. Rashi looked at his partner in surprise. "Han, you can't dash." "I told you," interrupted Han in a soft tone, "that I now follow Naruto. The whole reason that I'm even here today is because of him. I know that he had his reasons for even bringing me back in the first place. But I don't care. I already made up my mind." Rashi sighed as he looked away. "I shouldn't be too surprised, but he has a point. Like the brat said, he's simply taking back what he gave me. Never thought that I would do this. I guess being around Han too much has affected me too." Rashi looked straight at Naruto. "I'll do it as well." "That's two then," thought Kurama as he observed all of this before looking down at Naruto. "Well then, brat, how are you going to convince the others?" Yagura took a step forward. "I'll do it too. Like you said, you're simply taking back what you gave me. Besides, there's nothing left for me to do in this life any longer." Utakata looked at Yagura in surprise, much like how Rashi had done with Han. Seeing this, Yagura smiled. "Don't worry about it. This is my choice. After everything that I did, maybe this will help atone for that." Utakata merely sighed, his mind going back to Hataru. If she were here, it would have been so easy for him to have said to hell with all of this. But that was not the case. Like Yagura said, the whole reason he was even here right now was due to Naruto. And unlike last time, Utakata knew that Hataru was in safe hands in Kiri. No matter how much he disliked the place, even he had to admit that Mei was doing a very good job at running the village. So with not much enthusiasm present, Utakata muttered, "Fine. I guess that I'm in too." Yujito looked at the ones that had agreed with wide eyes. "You can't be serious. How can all of you dash?" Yujito. Yujito looked towards B. B looked right back at her with a grin on his face. "You shouldn't question them, yo. They all have their reasons for choosing this. But they did it of their own free will, and that is something that you cannot take away from them despite being Jinchuriki, hooray." Yujito teached as she looked away. She knew that B was right. But that didn't mean that she liked it. When one became a Jinchuriki, that person lost many things. But one of the few things that the person could keep was his free will. The act of choosing whatever the hell it was that they wanted to do, be it to help his village prosper or not. But the choice was still there. And that was exactly what the others had done. Matatabi simply looked down at her, understanding the present in his eyes. He understood why Yujito was so against this. It was due to the fact that she felt as if her life was chosen for her. Growing up in B's shadow, Yujito had tried for the villagers in Kumo to recognize her as an individual person, not just as the other Jinchuriki. It was thanks to B that she was even treated fairly by the remaining populace. Everything that she had accomplished was simply viewed by others as something that was only possible because of B. And she hated that. Fu looked at Naruto, who was not making eye contact with her. Bringing both of her shaking fists to her side, Fu took slow breaths in order to calm herself. She didn't understand why Naruto was behaving like this. He did possess a contract with the Shinigami in which he could bring back the dead completely and not partially, like with the Edo Tensei. If the others knew this, then this wouldn't be too hard. Right? You can't avoid it, Uzumaki. They should know that I will also consume their souls in the process, making it impossible for them to return to the land of the living again even with that contract of yours. That is the price for using this power. But of course, Naruto already knew that. Or suspected it at the very least. That was why he couldn't look at Fu. He knew that there would be deaths. It was only natural. Things never go down perfectly no matter how long one spent preparing for them. That was just a fact. The others had died by different causes, all of which had nothing to do with him whatsoever. But with Fu, he was basically killing her. "Don't be so unsure about this," stated Son Goku in a gruff voice, speaking directly to Yujito. "Do you really believe that you're the only one here that doesn't want to die? But our deaths are necessary for the future to not be so bleak as it otherwise would be." Yujito opened her mouth to retort but closed it immediately after. She didn't really know what to say. B glanced at her for a moment before pointing both of his thumbs at himself. "Well, count the B in." "What?" Yujito exclaimed as she looked at him with a shocked look. "What will Reikage-sama say dash?" "He can't say anything," interrupted B with another grin. "It's my own choice. Big Bro has been trying to keep me safe for many years now, but in the process made me lose one of the few things that I have as a Jinchuriki. Free will," muttered Yujito. B nodded. "You hit it in one, kitty. I was simply locked up in the village like a weapon that was needed at the moment. I couldn't do anything. I was like a beast locked up in a cage. But not anymore. Maybe I'm just doing this to rebel." B shrugged. "Who knows? But I'm still going through with it." Behind him, Gyuki shook his head. "You never change, B, but that's for the best, I suppose." Yujito lowered her head, not knowing what to say at the moment. She knew that she was alone. Despite not having said a word, Yujito knew that Fu was with Naruto as well. Seeing this, Naruto walked forward to where Yujito currently stood. Stopping in front of her, Naruto brought one of his hands towards the kunoichi's chin, effectively raising her head up in order for her to look at him. I can understand why you're hesitant, began Naruto calmly, but you should also understand that I'm not like the rest. I'm a Jinchuriki just like you. I know what it's like to be viewed as something else, as a monster and not human. I know that you don't want to be used by anyone for his personal gain. And I'm telling you now that that is not my intention. I didn't know that this would be how things would go. I promise you that. I'm also not forcing you to do anything. I'm asking you if you could please help me with this. I know it's a big thing to ask considering that it's your life. I'll understand if you say no as well. But I just wanted for you to know that I don't consider you a tool. To me, you're as much of a free individual as anyone else as well as every other person in this, including the Bijou themselves. We all have a mind of our own. But I'm asking, will you please help us? Despite herself, Yujito started to enjoy the feeling that Naruto's hand resting on her chin brought her. It was silly really, but that didn't concern her in the slightest. What will happen if I do? I don't know, answered Naruto honestly, but I'll do everything I can to make sure that your sacrifice along with everyone else's isn't in vain. You have my word. If the irrational Yujito was in control, she would have said that a simple promise didn't mean much in the world that they lived in. But Yujito was not present at that moment. She had left the building, in a matter of sense. Yujito sighed silently. I'll do it. Naruto nodded in gratitude, stepping away from her as he went to stand back in his spot. Yujito already missed the feeling of Naruto's hand before she refocused herself. That was now impossible. If she had made up her mind sooner, then things between them could have been better. But now, it was too late. Fu walked up to Naruto, wrapping her arms around him in order to bring him into a tight hug. Kurama looked at the others. It's decided then. We will all now return to the real world to finish this. The other Bijou besides Chome nodded, disappearing along with their respective Jinchuriki except for Fu. Something is troubling you, isn't it? Asked Fu. Naruto sighed. So you can tell, huh? Fu pulled her head back in order to look at him. Yeah. You're not as confident as you have been before all of this. Just what's troubling you? Naruto sighed again before he kissed the girl in front of him in the cheek. This is goodbye, Fu. We won't see each other again. Fu simply stared at him. What do you mean? In exchange for the Saikitsugakari using its power in order to destroy the Jubi's will, your soul, along with the others, will be consumed in the process, which means that the Shinigami will never get them. So you won't be able to revive us, finished Fu in a whisper. Naruto nodded silently. Exactly. Fu smiled despite knowing what was to become of her. So that's why you're like this, eh? She let out a small fit of giggles. Really, I never would have imagined. Naruto frowned. This isn't a laughing matter, you know. Fu shook her head. Maybe for you it isn't. But do you know the thing that I want the most in the world? Naruto was silent, not knowing the answer. But Fu already knew this. After all, she hadn't told this to anyone, not even Chome. The thing that I want, or wanted, is for someone to have loved me for myself. Not for being a Jinchuriki or any other reason. Just for me being the girl that I am. And you gave me that. Naruto looked away, not knowing what to say. Fu smiled as she retracted her arms from around him, stepping back and towards where Chome stood. I love you. Naruto widened, but before he could say something, Fu disappeared along with Chome. Kurama merely looked towards his host. It's time, Naruto. This was also a goodbye for the two of them. But they didn't need to say anything to each other. They already knew what the other was thinking and feeling. And that was enough. No words needed to be said. Naruto closed his eyes as he brought the Saikitsugakari in front of him. Yeah, let's go. The Jubi snarled as it looked around the empty space where it currently stood, or well floated. It could faintly feel what was happening out there in the real world. Mainly, the confrontation between Naruto and Shin. With this information, it had been trying to find a way to weaken the human that it currently resided in. In the beginning, the Jubi hadn't minded being sealed inside Naruto. I was curious about the young Uzumaki. Mainly, the path that he was going down in. But that curiosity had died in the Land of Iron when it was clearly shown to the Jubi that Naruto was not going to be intimidated by it or its power. But no matter what it tried, the Jubi couldn't find a way to weaken Naruto's mind so that it could try to escape. It was clear to the Jubi at this point that the reason Naruto had sealed it so far deep into his empty part of his deep subconscious was so that the Jubi couldn't use any of his memories or the sword against him. This place was completely empty save for itself. The Jubi snarled again. I cannot allow for a simple human to contain me. But I must have patience. Just like with the Rikudo-san Nin, I will break out of this prison and finally be free once again. Its thoughts were cut short when the Jubi sensed a familiar presence entering the devoid area. Looking in front of it, the Jubi came face to face with Naruto, who had appeared out of nothingness, the Saikatsu Gakari in his hands. The Jubi immediately recognized the sword, making it snarl yet again. So you now even have that sword, do you? But you're foolish if you think that that will stop me. Your predecessor tried the same thing and he failed. What makes you think that you will succeed? Naruto simply smirked. Because unlike how I was in the past, I didn't have anyone else at my side. But now it's different, Jubi. Because of you, things are the way that they are today. So now, I will end you. Oh. And who are you to lecture me, brat? You're no better than I am. Naruto merely shrugged. I've heard that countless times before and my response is still the same, I don't care. No matter what you say, it won't change things now. I'm already set as to where I want to go. The Jubi snarled for another time. Do you really believe that you will defeat me? Naruto smirked again. I already told you, I do. You're the one that is too overconfident here. All around us, this empty space, it's all part of me. Naruto raised his free hand. You might be a god, but here in my mind, I make the rules. I'm the god here. Less than a second later, the Jubi soon found its entire body pushed down by torii gates. The Jubi gritted its large teeth as it looked at the approaching Naruto with its single massive eye. Why you? Naruto narrowed his Rinnegan-activated eyes at the bijou in front of him, a dark smirk on his face. As a sentiment shared by my counterpart, it's my deepest regret that I'll only be able to do this once. This is it for you, Jubi. The Jubi let out a massive roar filled with anger as it tried to break from the torii gates, its single eye looking straight at Naruto, who stood in front of it and raised the Saikatsu Gakari. Without another word, Naruto brought the Saikatsu Gakari down upon the beast's head, its entire blade covered in a crimson aura which quickly spread out completely throughout the Jubi's form. The Jubi let out another massive roar, this time in extreme pain, however. It was the first time in thousands of years that it had felt such pain. Naruto for his part gritted his teeth as he pushed every ounce of the combined power of the bijou into the beast in front of him before letting out a scream. Then, it all went quiet. Kushina lowered her hands from her face as the massive light from the explosion caused by Shin began to die down, slowly but steadily. Just what happened, thought Kushina as she stood up, looking around her carefully. Quickly spinning around, Kushina came face to face with a worried-looking Mei. Kushina lowered her guard slightly at seeing the familiar redhead. Mei. Mei walked up towards Kushina, looking her straight in the eyes. What's going on? Yagura and the others disappeared into ashes. Kushina looked at her with a confused look. What are you talking about? Before Mei could answer, laughter was heard from within the center of where the explosion had occurred. The location was obscured by a large cloud of dust that was still present in the area, however. But Kushina recognized the laugh immediately. Mei looked towards the direction of where the laugh was coming from. And who might that be? Kushina frowned as she turned towards the direction of the laugh. Trouble. Soon, the cloud of dust disappeared, revealing a laughing Shin who still had his level 2 curse mark active and without his left arm and with a hole present in his stomach. Mei could not believe what she was seeing. Just how is he still alive? Because he's not human, answered Kushina without any hesitation. Mei merely frowned at the response. Then just what exactly was the individual in front of them? Shin continued to laugh despite the fact that a large amount of his blood was flowing down from both his arm and from the hole present in his stomach. Finally. I killed him. He's dead. Kushina's eyes widened when she realized who Shin was talking about. Looking around her, Kushina found that Kurama was not present any longer. Neither was Fu or Shikaku or any of the others that had arrived for that matter. This can't be. I would think about that twice if I were you. Shin's eyes widened in both shock and anger when he heard the voice coming from behind him. This can't be. Behind him stood an unharmed Naruto who currently had the Saikatsu Gakari in his hand and placed it on Shin's shoulder. Looking behind him, Shin gritted his teeth in anger. Just how are you even alive? Naruto raised an eyebrow. I can say the same to you. But my guess is that it has something to do with the curse mark of yours. Well, not that it matters anymore because you're going to die now. Despite the situation, Shin smirked. Is that so? I think we've already established that that little sword of yours isn't going to affect me. Naruto smirked in return. You're right. But you're forgetting that this sword of mine is still a sword in the end. Even without its power, if I just cut your head off, I'm pretty sure that even you would die. Aren't I right? Shin's smirk disappeared with that. His Rinnegan flared as he made to continue fighting Naruto despite the fact that he no longer had an arm and the hole on his stomach due to his lack of control in releasing his chakra into an explosion. But Naruto didn't give him the chance to try to fight back. With one swift movement, Naruto successfully beheaded the individual in front of him without a single ounce of remorse. The last expression on Shin's face was that of anger as it fell to the ground beside the now beheaded body that fell on its front. Both the body and the head began to wither and dissipate into a dark gas, quickly evaporating up to the darkening sky. Naruto sighed as he placed the Saikatsu Gakari on his back, looking up to the sky to gaze at the disappearing gas that had once made up Shin's body. All of that, and this is how it ends, eh? Naruto laughed without any humor as he closed his eyes. After all of that, what am I supposed to do now? Naruto. Naruto looked to the side to see a running Kushina heading towards him with Mei right behind her. Before he could try and stop her, Kushina engulfed Naruto into a hug, tears running down her cheek. I thought that I had lost you. Naruto simply remained quiet, not knowing what to say. This was due to the fact as to his questioning as to why he had even forgiven the woman that was currently crying on his shoulder. She was as guilty as his father had been. And she hadn't even said a single word of apology either. This question was due to the Saikatsu Gakari asking him the very same thing: why did he forgive his mother? Mei simply stepped back, allowing for mother and son to enjoy a small moment of happy reunion. After a few moments, Mei looked towards the direction of where the Hokage mountain should have been only to find it heavily damaged. All of the faces of the Hokages were badly disfigured somehow. I guess this is it, thought Mei before something else came to mind. Just what had happened to Yagura and the rest? The three shinobi quickly looked up to the sky to see Mukaryu making his way down towards him, carrying two passengers on his back. Kushina released Naruto from the hug in order to look at who Mukaryu was transporting. So you two made it then, commented Kushina with a small smile. One Mitarashi Anko smirked as she jumped off of Mukaryu's head after said dragon had landed on the ground. Landing on the ground, Anko pointed at herself. I'm just too awesome to die. Mukaryu snorted. Awesome my ass, you wouldn't stop screaming at my fellow dragons to bring you back here after you had reawakened. Anko simply waved her hand in dismissal. There's no reason to focus on the details, is there? At any rate, it seems that you won, Gaki, she finished with a grin. Naruto chuckled. Yeah, I guess I did. The other passenger sighed as she jumped off and landed next to Anko. You don't sound too excited, you know. Naruto turned his back on her. And what makes you say that, Fuka? Fuka raised an eyebrow before shaking her head. Forget I said anything. Kushina looked at Naruto's back with a frown. She's right, though. Just what's troubling you? Naruto was silent for a few moments before finally answering, I'm just trying to understand where you and I stand. We're certainly not a regular mother and son, that's for sure. Kushina's frown remained. So this is what this is about. Well, now is as good a time as any, I suppose. Walking towards her son, Kushina placed her hand on his shoulder after she had gotten closed enough, turning him around to look at her. You're right. We're not normal mothers and sons. That relationship left the table quite a while ago. I also understand that there are many things that need to be resolved between you and me, mainly the fact that I was also responsible for the life that you had. There's really nothing that I can do to change the past, so it all really comes down to you. If you can find it in yourself to forgive me. But before that, this was long overdue, but... Quickly wrapping her arms around Naruto again, Kushina held him close to her. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not being there with you. For not having been able to give you the love that you rightly deserve. For not being there with you as you grew up. For not stopping Minato from going through with his plan, I'm so sorry. Naruto was silent for a few moments before he returned the hug, wrapping his arms around the now crying woman. Truth of the matter was that he had already forgiven her. Since the moment that she had agreed to join him, that had been the case. The trouble that he had faced was the why. And despite what he had told Gaara, the why did matter. After hearing her apology, Naruto didn't have any more doubt that he had made the right choice in forgiving her. While others could disagree, all he had to say was for them to go to hell. Plain and simple. Watching this, Anko grinned as she spread her arms wide around her. Well, would you look at that? Chaos really does bring out the good in people. Next to her, Fuka's sweat dropped. Psychotic much? Mei smiled for a moment before she asked the question that had been in her mind, as heartwarming as this is, just what exactly happened to the others. Pulling away from Kushina, Naruto glanced at Mei's direction. They sacrificed themselves in order for me to win this. Mei frowned at the response. Sacrifice how? That's right. Kushina took a couple of steps back as she quickly wiped the tears from her face, looking around the next moment. Where's Miko-chan and the others? They're also dead. Kushina looked at Naruto, who had answered. What? Naruto sighed. Yeah, everyone else who isn't here is now dead. Kushina's eyes were wide. But how? By choice. The others turned to look at Mukiryu, who had answered. The Uchiha died by choice. I could have saved them before killing that snake bastard, but it seemed that even they had had enough of this world. Fuka closed her eyes. The same with Mito. And Niji, as well as both Obito and Itachi, thought Naruto, putting aside the fact that Orochimaru had indeed tried to do something. The snake Sennin was no longer an issue. Kushina also closed her eyes, a small smile on her face. I see, in the end, though, they went out by choice at least. She too pushed the snake bastard comment aside. She knew that Naruto would fill her in later. Before anything else could continue, the arrival of the remainder of the forces from Kyumo halted Naruto and the others. Ah, so the genjutsu has been undone then, thought Naruto with a bored look. Not that it mattered. Kyumo was no longer useful. The Raikage stepped forward, walking from somewhere within his forces. Uzumaki. Naruto simply looked right back at him. What? Pointed a finger at him with an enraged look on his face. You will pay for the embarrassment that you have put me through. Naruto chuckled. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it Mikoto who placed you in a genjutsu? Mei silently gasped at the information, glancing at Kushina for confirmation only to see the redhead looking straight at A growl. Don't worry about that. After I'm through with you, I'm going to go after her. Naruto looked at A in obvious amusement. Well, he's the best test subject that I'll be able to find, so why not? A activated his lightning cloak as the rest of the Kumo shinobi behind him readied themselves. Talking a couple of steps forward, Naruto glanced behind him toward the others. Don't interfere. Edition, quite cocky, aren't you? Naruto didn't respond. Seeing this, A rushed at Naruto with the rest of the shinobi following behind him. Naruto didn't even flinch as A appeared right in front of him in an instant with his fist coming towards him. At the last second, A and every single one of his shinobi were literally blown up into pieces from the inside out. Even A, who had had his lightning cloak activated, was shredded into pieces. The others could only watch with wide eyes. What is this? Said Mei with a shocked look. Naruto looked at his handiwork. Thanks to his absorbing the Jubi's power, his Rinnegan powers have now been escalated to a higher degree than ever, the massacre in front of him being a prime example. It was just the Shinra Tensei that Naruto had used to blow every single organ in every single shinobi. That was how much of a control that Naruto had. He was literally on a godly level now. Well, when he needed it the least, that was. Everything was over now. Naruto turned to look at the shaken Mei. Now, you know what I'm capable of. Know that this, he pointed towards the remains of the shinobi, could very well happen to you and your shinobi as well. And it most likely will. From here on out, we are no longer allies. I'll be watching you from now on, Terumi Mei. Mei simply took a step back before she disappeared in a puddle of water, no doubt retreating back to where her shinobi were lest she too be killed. Anko looked at Naruto with a frown. Why exactly did you let her go? Naruto looked at her. Because unlike the others, she really is trying her best in changing her village. So was Tsunade, commented Fuka. Naruto nodded at that. Yes, she was, and I didn't kill her. Well, it was mostly because Mito wanted to take care of herself. It certainly is stupid of me, but now with this power, all of that seems irrelevant. Not to mention that it all comes down to my own selfish goal. Fuka frowned. So, this really was all about getting back at Konoha for what they did to you. Naruto nodded again. Yes, it is. What they did to our clan was always a secondary reason for me. But of course, not for everyone else. But that no longer matters now. We still have things to wrap up here before we head to the other villages. Kushina jumped up on top of Mikaryu's head, looking back at Naruto with a smile. Well then? What are you waiting for? You don't want the villagers to get away, do you? Naruto smirked before he, Anko, and Fuka joined her. Don't forget about us. Naruto didn't even turn around. Zetsu, I'm sure that you will enjoy the coming show. Keep your eyes open, will you? White Zetsu grinned. Will do. Black Zetsu didn't respond, but a ghost of a smile could be seen on his lips. Naruto looked at the burning buildings around him, the others standing behind him. Looking down at Mikaru, Naruto had a feral grin on his face. Well then, shall we get started? This had been only the beginning. After the sun had set, Konoha was no more. Its residents and shinobi had been reduced to nothing. The few that had escaped the massacre had managed to escape to surrounding lands. After Konoha, Iwa soon followed. With 2 major shinobi villages having been taken out as well as 2 others being severely weakened, the other smaller nations had tried to rise to power themselves before all of their efforts had been wiped out effortlessly by Naruto. As for Kiri, Mei took Naruto's threat to heart. She made sure that nothing like what had happened with Yagura and Tobi could be repeated again. But the time of the shinobi had come to its end. With the shinobi villages having been wiped out, the remaining shinobi found themselves no longer useful. Nations no longer wanted them as they possessed a threat of another war breaking out. And they did not want that. A new balance of power was needed and the shinobi were not included. The new Akatsuki had made sure of that. After stopping the other smaller villages from trying to take over, Naruto and the others had never been seen again. But the world was changing to a new era where shinobi and chakra were no longer needed. The creation of a new world, where science was taking over, was born. And this came about because of the acts of one person and in his pursuit of trying to get even with the people that had shunned him. A childish reason, perhaps, and yet something greater was born as a result. A new era was here. Alright, before we get to the final chapter, the author has included two different endings. So I have included both endings in this video for your listening pleasure. Now let's get back to the video. Ending 1. In the middle of a large commercial city known as Tokyo to most people in the world, a large skyscraper stood out amongst all the others present. The building possessed over 50 stories. The building also stood right in the center of the city in its downtown area, making it of much importance, which it was. The tall building belonged to none other than Uzumaki Incorporated, as it was illustrated by the giant U hanging right in the middle of the building, mainly around its 25th floor, give or take a few floors. Uzumaki Incorporated was one of the most famous corporations in Japan, hell in the world. It specialized in businesses, but it also contained side branches in other areas such as sports, cosmetics for both men and women alike, as well as a small industry in both clothing manufacturing and military products production. And right at the highest floor of the massive skyscraper, one man stood, or well sat, behind a large dark wooden desk in his office that took up the entire floor. Okay, so it wasn't just an office. An entertainment center accompanied by a small bar took up about half of the floor, with the other being the true office. As the man had put it when he had it built, he liked to put business together with pleasure. The man, who also happened to be the chairman of the corporation in his 20s, was wearing black cargo pants with a long-sleeved navy blue dress shirt with the top buttons unbuttoned and with the sleeves rolled up, as well as black dress shoes. The man ran a hand through his spiky-ish silver hair as he looked at all the paperwork on his desk. Really, this was the bane of his existence. It has been so for many years now. Oh, how he would love to just burn every single paper in front of him so that he could finally be free from it. But as his official wife had put it, it wasn't gentlemanlike. Really, why she would even think that he would care if it was gentlemanlike or not was beyond him. But sacrifices had to be made when running a large corporation, he supposed. Besides, he had a method to get away from doing paperwork so that he could enjoy his entertainment center. That was the whole reason that he had built it next to his office. After all, everyone would think that he was working when in fact he was not. Well, he was, but not at the same time. It wasn't really complicated once he did his method, but he couldn't very well do that at the moment. And the reason being an attractive red-headed woman walking right through the doorway as if she owned the place, which wasn't far off from the truth. The female redhead was wearing a two-piece silver suit with a skirt, accompanied by a jacket over the dress shirt. The woman did leave some of her top exposed, however, giving an outsider a small visible shot of her cleavage. Not that the woman cared at any rate. The redhead also wore a diamond necklace that hung around her neck as well as high heels. All in all, she had the image of an attractive businesswoman. Well, as far as the world was concerned at least. The redhead had a smirk on her face as she walked towards the desk where the man was sitting. Having fun, are we? The silver-haired man shot her an annoyed look. If you're here to just tease me about all of this damn paperwork, then you're just wasting your time. Also, if that's the case, then you should leave because I have a lot of work to do, Kushina. Kushina shook her head as she hopped on top of the wooden desk, leaning forward to get closer to the man's face and knowing full well that she was giving him a good view of her cleavage. Please. I already know that you use shadow clones to sneak out of doing your work, Naruto-kun. So don't even try to lie to me about that. I can smell a lie a mile away. Naruto sighed as he leaned back on his leather chair. All right, you got me. So? Why are you here then? Kushina pouted. What? Aren't you glad to see me? An image of another raven-haired woman entered Naruto's mind before he dismissed it. It's not like that. But knowing you, I'm pretty sure that you're not here to help me get away from doing this paperwork. Well, you might be, but not in the good way. Kushina rolled her eyes. Yes, I know. You have a fetish for office sex. Naruto pointed an accusing finger at her. It's not a fetish. And besides, it's not like you don't enjoy it. Kushina waved a hand in dismissal. Putting that aside, yes, there's a reason that I'm here today. Naruto sighed again before placing a hand on his silver-colored hair. So? Is there a problem? Kushina also let out a sigh. I don't know if it's a problem or not, but apparently Enko has run into some difficulties. Naruto turned serious upon hearing this. Enko was the head of the CIA, an international agency dealing mainly with espionage as well, being one of the most important information sources for a major world power in the world today, the United States of America. How Enko got into that position was still sketchy to Naruto and the others, not that it didn't come in handy at times. When they had asked her, Enko had simply let out a smirk and responded with, "It's better for whatever sanity that you still have left that you don't know." They had dropped the subject immediately. What kind of problem is it? Kushina let out another sigh before she brought out a photograph from one of her pockets, placing it right on the desk in front of Naruto so that he could see it. Recognizing the person in the photograph immediately, Naruto's blood ran cold. He spun his chair around, turning to look out towards the city laying down below him through his windows. Where was this taken? In the Middle East. Specifically in Saudi Arabia. Naruto's hands turned into fists. What are you doing here now, you old man? The person in the photograph was none other than the old man that the Rikudo Sennin had told him about when he had appeared to Naruto for the final time. Mainly, the same old man that had given the Sennin the Rinnegan. Or well, it was technically Naruto as well. All of his memories from his past life had returned as well, so he knew that the old man in the photograph was the same as the one that had appeared thousands of years ago. Kushina, along with the others, already knew of his existence because Naruto had told them. They had had so much free time to spare, after all. And Kushina wanted to know everything immediately. Kushina looked at Naruto, who was still looking out the window. What will you do? Naruto chuckled humorlessly. Do you want to know something? That's the one thing that I still don't know, just who that old man is. I have a feeling that not even the Rikudo Sennin knew. And since he won't show himself to me anymore, I can't really ask him. That was something else that had bothered Naruto for years. After the Rikudo Sennin had explained to him about how the Jubi came to be free that night in Yuzu, he had never again shown himself. Naruto had even asked the Shinigami whom Naruto still possessed a contract with. But the Shinigami had simply said to not worry about it, which had the opposite effect. Kushina frowned. But isn't the Rikudo Sennin who you were in your past life? Then doesn't it make sense that dash? I don't know, interrupted Naruto, already knowing what Kushina was going to say. I really don't know. I really don't get how he was able to show himself to me despite the fact that I am him. But I've long since gave up trying to figure some things out. Especially with all the time that has gone by. Naruto, along with Kushina and the others, were now, for the lack of a better word, immortal. Well, they could still be killed if they were beheaded or something of the sort. But they didn't age, none of them. They were now also immune to any diseases. And just how was this possible? A lot of things came into factor in this. But mainly two. And those were the Jubi's chakra and the contract that Naruto had with the Shinigami. Naruto was now basically the new Jubi. He was on the godly level now. Thanks to his now possessing the Jubi's power as his own, he couldn't age. So, he basically passed some of this power on to the others. Of course, by normal means, the others would have died since the Jubi's chakra was extremely toxic, save for perhaps Kushina and Fuka. But with the Shinigami's help, they had all adapted to having less than a fraction of the Jubi's power in them, which kept them alive for so long. The Shinigami hadn't taken it too well. After all, he was the god of death. He wasn't supposed to be saving lives. He was supposed to be taking them. But after giving him some other souls in return, the Shinigami had calmed down. Kushina picked up the photograph, observing it intently. We can't just let this go. Not even the Shinigami will tell you who this guy is. And the last time that he was here, he gave you the Rinnegan. And look how that turned out. What do you think he's going to do now? Naruto frowned as he stood up from his chair and walked towards the nearest window. I don't know, I really don't know what his motives are. Is it peace? Because I really doubt that. The current world was proof of that. After the shinobi world had collapsed, it had only taken a few years before humanity started to battle against itself once more. The shinobi world was gone, but Naruto highly doubted that this one was any better. Kushina placed the photograph down again. One thing is for sure, though. And that is that whoever this man is, he's certainly not Kami. Naruto closed his eyes upon hearing that. That was what he had believed at first. Hell, he was sure that even the Rikudo Sennin had believed that. But Naruto was now sure that the true Kami had just taken advantage of the actions of this man. Kami had not given the Rikudo Sennin the Rinnegan. And Naruto was sure that Kami did exist. But what exactly did Kami do? Naruto wasn't sure of that. But it seemed that not even the Shinigami wanted to get involved in this time. And that came as a great surprise to Naruto. Naruto turned to look at Kushina, who was now also his official wife. Contact Enko and Fuka. We're going to get to the bottom of this. Kushina smirked as she hopped off the table. Now that's what I like to hear. But are you sure that Fuka will appreciate our taking her away from her modeling tour? Unlike the rest, Fuka had taken to a less hectic lifestyle in a sense. And that was modeling. Fuka was now the #1 female model in, well, everything. Swimsuits, normal attire, cosmetics, you name it. She was at the top of them all. Naruto shrugged. She's going to have to deal with it. Kushina merely continued to smirk as she walked up to him, giving him a small kiss on the lips before walking out. I'll get to it then. She sent him a wink as she walked out of his office, closing the door behind her. Naruto turned back to look out the window, already sensing the presence of a new arrival. I see that you're here too, Zetsu. Zetsu appeared above him in the ceiling of his office. Your skills haven't diminished, even after all these years. But it seems that you're going to need our assistance once more. White Zetsu grinned. After all those years, it's taking me back. Naruto humphed as he closed his eyes, his mind remembering all the others that had sacrificed themselves. Yeah. It seemed that things were going to get interesting again. Ending 2. Naruto sighed as he leaned back in his chair, stretching his arms out. Looking down towards the mess of paperwork on his desk, he scratched his cheek. After all the adventures he had had, this was where he had ended up. Oh well. It did have its perks. Like, owning a multi-billion corporation did give him a lot of luxuries. Traveling all over the world, seeing sights other people couldn't. Of course, he supposed he did enjoy these times much more given everything that had led up to him being here. Mainly, the many troubled times through human history that he had witnessed. After he had destroyed Konoha and the shinobi world had begun to collapse, Naruto and the others had hidden themselves away from the rest of the world. Even after humanity had gone back to forgetting about chakra once the shinobi culture died out, they didn't reveal themselves. They merely walked throughout time like normal, but powerfully rich, humans. Naruto could still recall the many things that he had seen. The glorious Egyptians, the intellectual Greeks, the powerful Romans, the extravagant Chinese. Those were just to name a few of the ancient worlds that he had lived in. Thankfully, he and his family had been able to survive all the dark aspects of time as well. The biggest two that came to mind being the Dark Ages after the Roman Empire collapsed and the Black Plague. Due to the chakra of the Jubi resonating within them all, they had never once acquired that awful disease. Of course, Naruto knew that his Uzumaki genes played a big part as well. But now, he was in the present day where technology was supreme. And his company, Uzumaki Incorporated, was one of the biggest ones in the world today. His company dealt with pretty much everything, but mainly with stocks and the like. Naruto really didn't handle much with that prospect. He left such things to Kushina since the woman just loved the action that came along with the job. Naruto really didn't see the appeal. Then again, business wasn't something that he had ever wanted to partake in. But such was life. One ended up doing the most unlikely of things in the end. Maybe I should have joined Enko in America with the CIA, he thought. The former interrogator just couldn't get away from that way of life. As such, she always ended up joining some sort of military group that caught her interest. He still remembered how she had become the only woman general in the Roman Empire before she had faked her own death when she got bored with the job. After all, there wasn't much action after the empire had stopped expanding. Of course, many other men hadn't been too pleased with her when she had been there. After they had expressed their displeasure to her in person, she had silenced them pretty quickly. She did a pretty good job of hiding her mark on history as well. She had gone back to destroy any records that existed about her. She didn't want the world to know about her. But that was a whole different story altogether. Hell, he wouldn't mind being with Fuka in her worldwide model tour either. Even that sounded much more fun than being stuck here. Seems like giving up on my dream to become the Hokage didn't matter either way, Naruto thought in slight amusement. I still ended up being behind a desk doing paperwork. Just fantastic. You look just like a Hokage now, don't you? Using instincts and muscles that he had not used in centuries, Naruto was instantly on his feet in a defensive stance, his eyes scanning the office. But there was no one there. Nor did he sense any chakra anywhere. While humans in this age weren't able to access chakra anymore, they did possess it. Albeit, at low civilian levels. That was why, when he had been targeted for assassination in days past, he had still been able to pick up on that. That wasn't the case at the moment. At least, until a humanoid figure suddenly appeared before his desk. When Naruto's eyes caught sight of the being, he instantly knew who it was. Even after all these years, he had not forgotten about this person. And how could he? He had been the one to give him the Rinnegan to begin with. It's you. The being, wearing the same robes from when he had first appeared before the Rikudo Sennin, tilted his head in appraisal. It seems you still remember me. That does save me some trouble. Naruto T-ched, his hands clenching at his side. Yeah, you're not exactly someone I can forget. Even though I still have no idea who the hell you are. You're not Kami, that's for sure. Very astute for you, he said. But in order to simplify things, I'm Kami's messenger. I watch over everything that he does. Hence, you may call me the Watcher. Naruto scoffed. Right. Now that that's out of the way, mind telling me what you're doing here? Don't tell me your boss is planning on starting another world-changing event? The Watcher shook his head. No. Although the Jubi's release was through man's work. Not his. He never intended for the Jubi to ever be released. His plan was different altogether, but even through difficulties, he has ways to work around that. That's where the Rinnegan comes into the picture. And you. Naruto relaxed. So, you're here to tell me all of this? The Watcher walked around the desk towards the window, gazing out towards the busy downtown area of Tokyo. Yes. Things have settled down enough now. And it's apparent that you have no plans to try and take over this world. Even though with your power it would be like taking candy from a baby. Naruto grinned a little. Heh, I never thought someone so close to Kami would ever say something like that. The grin then vanished. But I have no reason to change things now. It's obvious to me that humans don't want to change. Not only that, but I'm not exactly guilt-free either. I had my revenge. Now, I'm only planning on living my quiet life with my family. No matter what you say, that's not going to change my mind. Don't worry about that. Kami has decided to allow things to flow freely. To only observe. That's where free will can truly be practiced. Naruto sighed. Some part of him actually thought that that was a bad idea. But he knew the others. They were happy with their lives. There was no way he was going to drag them down back to that life again. Especially considering just how much he had lost last time that he did. So, Naruto began, crossing his arms in front of him. Tell me, just what did your master hope to achieve by starting all that he did? A new world, of course, the Watcher answered without hesitation. All of this was designed to make his creations, humanity, part of the bigger world. Of the gods. That's why he gave you all the power of chakra, the same power as the gods. Naruto raised an eyebrow at that. What? There once was a war among the gods, the Watcher began. The one to start this war was none other than the Jubi, whom God had created before humanity. It was his first test to see how well he could do in that aspect. The Jubi was too good of a success. He was powerful. And the only one that could injure Kami since he possessed the same powers as him. But he started to abuse his powers. The other gods didn't take too well to this. The Jubi didn't care, however. It wasn't long before things escalated even further, leading to a war between them. Having no other choice, Kami had to step in. This plane was beginning to be affected as well. I'm sure you've heard of Noah's Ark? At Naruto's nod, he continued, that was a result of one of the battles. Given that the Jubi was created through Kami's powers, the battle was difficult. But in the end, Kami managed to seal him here on Earth, stripping him away from his ability to reason. Given that this is his domain, no other gods can do anything without his permission. Nor are they strong enough to oppose him. So it was the perfect place. But then your father in your past life interfered. Interfered? Naruto repeated. Your boss was the one that gave him dash. Yes, he did attain his powers from Kami, the Watcher agreed. But he didn't suspect that the dear doctor would be able to hone in on his power enough to free Jubi from his imprisonment. And you're very much aware of what occurs after that. Yeah. The world turned to hell, Naruto said with a sigh. So now I know of the events that led to Jubi's imprisonment. But then why did Kami give humans chakra? What was his goal? Like I told you, the ability to stand on equal terms with gods, the Watcher stated. Seeing Naruto look at him with a look of confusion, he elaborated, ever since Kami created humanity, he was ridiculed for giving them free will. They only saw humans as a waste of time. So Kami came up with a plan to prove them wrong since he loves his creations to his very core. That's why he gave them the power to use chakra. Not all at once, of course. He wanted it to be a slow process. And he chose the doctor as the one to lead this from the moment he was conceived. But when the Jubi was released, he changed his plans to you. You weren't able to achieve this in your first lifetime, however. That was where Madara and the Shinigami came in. They were the ones to pave the way for your reincarnated self to achieve it at long last. But then you yourself decided to go a different path. And that is what has led to this imperfect world. Then let me guess, the perfect world is a combination of both this world and the shinobi world, Naruto said. That is correct, the Watcher replied with a nod. Humans would be aware of the world beyond. They would accept it. They would understand it. They would thrive in it. And you would be its head. Sounds appealing honestly, Naruto admitted. But it sounds just as appealing to prove Kami wrong. He's messed up with all of our lives too much. Although some good did come out of it. I am where I am today because of what Madara did. And he wouldn't have done all that he did if he hadn't discovered that his original plan was doomed to fail. Kami is very much aware of this, the Watcher said. That is why he no longer plans on meddling with you or the others. You are fit to live however you want and for as long as you want. Consider his gift for everything that you have lost to get here. Well, I appreciate it, Naruto said with some sarcasm. But I guess I should thank you for telling me this. That's one less loose end. Or the last one really. You haven't dwelt on it either, so it makes no difference, the Watcher stated, turning to face him once more. But at the very least, you now have your answers. Which means that there is no more meaning for me being here. I hope we never see each other again, Naruto commented as the being vanished just as he had appeared. You can also come out, Zetsu. And here I thought we had hit ourselves pretty well this time. And that's why you're an idiot. Naruto chuckled as the two attached brothers surfaced from the floor. You two are getting along nicely as usual. Black Zetsu sighed. It's my punishment for everything that I've done, I guess. Especially since Kami sounds like a prankster considering that he even manipulated Madara. We were all manipulated, Naruto said as he sat back down. It's just like you once told Mikoto. The only difference was that we didn't know who the Grand Puppeteer was. But even then, everyone chose what they wanted to do. Mikoto, Mito, Obito, Sasuke, Itachi, and Neji. They did what they wanted. Just like we did. Even if it did coincide with Kami's plan. Or maybe I'm just trying to offer myself some sort of condolence. Before Zetsu could respond, Kushina walked into the office with an iPad in hand, scanning through it. Naruto-kun, there are some papers I need for you to sign dash. The redhead stopped midway when she noticed that they weren't alone. Zetsu? What are you doing here? You rarely come out. That was true. Zetsu had pretty much become a hermit by this point. According to Black Zetsu, the world had become a dull place. There were only petty arguments here and there. And thus, he didn't feel the need to observe anything. Especially since Naruto didn't need their services anymore. On the other hand, White Zetsu only wanted to spy on important world meetings for the hell of it, which they did from time to time just to alleviate some boredom. We just thought we should pay the old boss a visit, White Zetsu answered with a grin. For a reminder of the good old days. He finally said something smart for a change, Black Zetsu thought to himself. Kushina nodded. Although she felt there was more to it than that, she didn't comment. She could ask Naruto later when they were alone. Anyway, Naruto-kun, I need dash. She stopped short as Naruto was in front of her in an instant, grabbing her by the waist and pulling her close before kissing her. TCH, he gets all the good stuff, White Zetsu grumbled while Black Zetsu sighed. And we're back to being an idiot. Not that I'm complaining, but what brought this on? Kushina asked after they had parted. Nothing. I just want to let you know that I love you and that I'm happy to be with you, Naruto said with a smile. Kushina returned the smile. It wasn't every day that Naruto did stuff like this out of the blue. Well, thank you. But you're still not getting away from finishing your work. So hop to it, mister. Rolling his eyes, Naruto did just that nevertheless. Hey, it was his life. And no matter how dull it got, he was content with it. And thus, it was just another day in the life of the Uzumakis. And there you have it for the series. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for those who helped with repeating audio in previous videos. Moving forward, videos should have the correct audio and not repeating or missing audio in them. Thank you and have a good rest of your day.